Hey, this is Mark from Casting Crowns, and you're listening to Dispatch Radio.
Well, folks, many times we've been talking about human and sex trafficking here on the show. You guys know the topic of my book. You guys know we just spoke to Austin Williams about a great film called 8 Days, and I was able to screen the film, and it is extremely powerful, and it is a must-watch, especially if you have young girls and boys at home. And I have such an honor and privilege to welcome director Jocko Bullions with us. We're going to talk about the film a little bit and get some insight into this global problem and some of his insights as well. Jocko, thank you for fitting us into your schedule, my friend.
Brandon, thank you. Thank you for the Global Dispatch. Thanks for everything you're doing, man. We appreciate you. Looking forward to reading that book of yours.
I will have to send you a copy. That sounds great, and I appreciate that as well. And let's get right to 8 Days. And let me begin with, I know that trafficking really hit you and your family personally. So I know that is obviously part of your motivation to put something like this to film. Give everybody a little bit of background or whatever you feel comfortable disclosing about what you and your family went through.
Yeah, we've got full disclosure on that, really because of my sister and her attitude to use her horrific experience to help save the lives of others, which she's a hero in my eyes for that, being willing to, because it's so hard to do. But Ilanka, my sister, and her story is well documented on the 700 Club and on the various outlets. She was trafficked in South Africa. So although her story is not a U.S.-based story, our family went through that in South Africa. That's originally where we're from. And what makes it interesting is immigrating to the United States, you think you leave those things behind. You think you leave it in the country. I love my country. I love South Africa. But you don't think those things happen in the U.S. There's just a global ideology of the United States that certain things just don't happen here, And then you get here, and 10 years later, you discover that the problem of child and minor sex trafficking is more prevalent in the United States than anywhere else in the world, and that was a shocker. So it is very personal to me. We had to deal with a sister being trafficked, the aftermath, having, at one time not being able to deal with it, attempt to take her own life, healing from that, the massive psychological and emotional trauma, to now being an activist and being a freedom fighter for girls, So it's been a process for us as a family. So making this movie had a lot of purpose for us, but really wanting the American public to understand that there's a crime and an epidemic in our midst that blows in like a mist, man. People don't see it, they don't know about it, and so it's impossible to protect our youth against a crime that the parents don't even know is real,
And the film deals very much with a U.S. presence. It is a very sobering take on the sex trafficking because the main character, Amber, is not poverty-stricken or anything. You kind of lay the groundwork with some backstories of two other characters that came from just horrible scenarios and therefore were trapped in this pretty much most of their lives. But Amber's kidnapped, and it's done through a party of friends, and it was a very unique and sort of, at least I hope, an eye-opening revelation for folks that watch the film. Give everybody a little insight on, where that piece of the dynamic came from and what you hope people take away from that.
Yeah, in the process of doing our research and our homework, the screenplay writer of the film is my wife, and that's what she does for a living. She writes film. And Philippa, in her research, we believe God led us to Homeland Security, and working with Homeland Security on this, they started telling us stories, and we started seeing a trend at the moment of what's happening and how pimps are working. And it's like anything else; it's like a fashion trend. There's certain ways how they work, and then it changes a little. And one of the ways at the time is, and right now where we are, is luring kids to events, luring them to the mall through a friend, getting them to a party, getting them to a public event. That's why we talk about the Super Bowl being such a mecca. It's tragic, but it is. Pimps call it their Super Bowl, and they're not talking about football. They're talking about this is our money day, right? So,
right.
So luring. So we chose to incorporate that, because we heard so many accounts, and I was in personal contact with so many victims who that had happened to. And I'm sitting with a safe house who looks at me and says, "We know 15 Ambers. We've worked with 15 Ambers this year. That exact scenario has happened, and it's what's happening." So for us, it was essential to be very time sensitive to what is really happening in culture at the moment. I was fanatical about Homeland Security and people who work this industry every day, people like Traffic 911, who I now sit on the board with because of the film, who fight this fight every day, who actually go in and rescue kids and talk to the juvenile detention officers and get them out of foster care situations. I wanted them to endorse the film saying, that's accurate. That is what's happening in our society at the moment.
And I thought that was one of the things that really portrayed through the most folks. And if you haven't seen this film, it's called 8 Days. You can go to 8daysfilm.org, find a location near you where it's still screening. If you're listening to us live here in the Tampa Bay area, there's a location here at the University Mall area. That theater is hosting this film. And Jocko is hit the nail on the head with this one about really trying to bring a real life scenario. It doesn't have some sort of, I credit TV shows like Blacklist. They delved into the sex trafficking for an episode, and there's been some other things. We talked about the film Taken and that kind of thing. And my book does have a very strong nucleus overseas. We talked a lot about Belgium, as you know, Jocko. There's like red light districts where this stuff it's just rampant. What's going on in some of the European countries and in Asia and that kind of thing. But here we are, just a day or so away from the Super Bowl. We get the news, of course, that here in the Tampa Bay area, one of our great football icons, Warren Sapp, is arrested by having, 2 prostitutes and assault and whatever. It just shows this stuff isn't like even really hidden. It's just that we're looking in a different direction. Am I right?
Absolutely. As a society, I believe this. And look, I'm a proud American. I am. I'm a proud South African. But as an American society, life is so comfortable here. And remember, people say, well, there's poverty in the U.S. Yes, but go to the inner parts of Africa. Go to see how women are treated in the Middle East. Go to see how people are indoctrinated in Asia. We're a free nation. We are. And we're so free that we have stopped looking at issues and talking about issues. We just turn the other way because it's easier. People have literally told me, don't tell me what is going on, because if I know, I have to do something about it. We have, as a society, decided to just look the other way. Find a reason to justify it, or find a reason to qualify why we shouldn't engage. And what we want to do with this film is have a captive audience in a theater, and you don't have a choice. I mean, you've seen it. You sit there and you have to connect with these characters, and you've got to feel. You've got to feel something. And for me, I hope it's rage. And I hope it is that you are just disturbed.
You are so right about the turning off of emotions in American society. And I am not criticizing anyone, but I will call some of my close family and friends out who were very excited and supportive of my book. But, when you start to get to the cold, harsh reality of it being about human and sex trafficking, well, the first half of the book's a lot more about character development. There's a lot of apprehension to not turn the pages. They don't want to. And I had one person confess that to me, to say, listen, I haven't really read it because I'm not sure I'm able to deal with that. I want to deal with that. And yet that is part of perpetuating the problem. If we don't realize what might be happening at the hotel, and we're speaking here in Tampa location, literally within a couple miles of my church, literally across the street from an elementary school, is a motel that has been linked to sex trafficking because it is literally adjacent to the interstate. It's in a very dangerous location, that kind of thing. And if we continue to turn a blind eye, Jocko, there's no way we're going to be able to bring in the authorities, the Homeland Securities, the mothers and the families that are like just home, just weeping, not knowing where their childs are.
Yeah, I'm so glad, Brandon. You're so on the point, man. Honestly, you are, because it is just time. We've become a nation that wants government to govern us, and government serves the people, and government is less government than people. And if we wait for the authorities, and I'm not blaming authorities, they are understaffed, they're undermanned. There are more soccer moms in Tampa Bay than there are police officers.
Yeah.
So should we not empower our soccer moms with knowledge about what the threat is for their children, so that they can police their neighborhoods, that they can report things that look out of place, that they can then go to authorities and say, listen, man, you might not know this, but this suspect activity at this shopping mall, or at this, massage parlor or nail salon, we have to start, we're like the Walking Dead. We have to wake up. Spiritually, we have to wake up, and we have to allow, my belief, as a Christian, God gives us incredible insight, and He will open our eyes if we're willing. And we have to then care about one another. It's not, if your kid is not trafficked, great. Let's make sure she stays not trafficked, but let's fight for your neighbor's kid. And let's fight for little Johnny in the 5th grade, and Susie in the 7th grade. Let's fight for each other's kids so that we have a society that does not tolerate these things.
Absolutely. And let me run down the websites again. FindAmber.com, 8daysfilm.org. It's on Facebook. That's 8daysfilm. And, of course, it's on Twitter and Instagram at 8daysfilm. And we're talking to Jaco Booyens about it, and it is an amazing moving film. And, Jaco, I have to ask, I know your wife, Philippa, is the one that did the writing, but let me ask this, because you're there with her during that developmental phase, trying to piece this together. And this was the hardest part for me. We pulled together about 17 pages. My daughter was very insightful and important in the development of the book, and we had reading through 17 pages of testimonies from rescued sex slaves in Albania. And we're just weeping. We're just crying. And I remember just praying, God, how do you have a character out of this? How do you create a believable person and not create a film or a book or a setting that's not like Silence of the Lambs? That's not nearly unwatchable. How do you make? And you did that. You guys pulled together enough. I've told my Christian brothers and sisters there's a few curse words, but there's no nudity. There's a lot of allusion to what's happening, and it's worse because you don't see it because it's in your head. But we don't need to see the graphic nature. We know what's really going to happen. But how do you make a character? How did you get to that place? Tell me a little bit about that process.
That was the toughest part of it all. Where's the line? Because as a Christian, there will never be nudity in any of my films. Not only do I not want to put nudity on the screen, but I don't want to subject the actress to the humiliation.
Right.
Think about that for a second. People never think about, so never will I do that. Yes, there is some language in the film, and we wrestled with that, Brandon. We wrestled with it because I said, why? But for me to really show you what pimps do, because they've been glorified in film. When you look at a movie like Hustle and Flow with Terrence Howard, you feel sorry for the pimp. They portray him in a way where you feel like, man, and they sing a song, "Life's just hard for a pimp," and no, it's not. So we had to show these characters for who they really are, and so that you could see what someone goes through. So it was very, very difficult for us. It was hours and hours of prayer, saying, God, how do we do this? And it's by the grace and hand of God, honestly. It's not by our design. Philippa will tell you as a writer, we were so out of control with this film, and God had full control and led us, and we're very grateful. But it was obvious to me, the mind is more powerful than the eye. If I show you a scene, or if you see a scene in film where a guy and a girl jumps in bed, it's limited to what you see. When I show a guy jumping on a teenager, and I cut to black, and you hear her voice or thoughts, your mind is imaginative. Your mind can go places where I can never take your eye.
Right.
You get it. So for me, that was obvious. That was the way to go. But for the most part, we have strong support from the church, understanding why there's some words in there coming from the right characters. And that you also have to understand the perspective. You're not going to see Amber throwing language out, or, it's the pimp and the bottom girl, and that's the life they live, So.
And let me just say, folks, let me interject here. I don't mean to cut Jaco off, but there's no F-bombs. It is just some profanity, but it's also not. There's a difference between profanity, cuss words, versus being profane, and I never found it profane. And let me touch on nudity, by the way, and let me thank Jaco for not including that. And I've talked to many filmmakers about this. As you know, I'm a Christian that's saved by grace, but I still struggle with that predisposition towards nudity and pornography and those kinds of things. And I don't want to be subjected to it anymore. When it comes up in a film or something I'm watching unexpectedly, I hit fast forward. I don't want to see that. I look the other way and I'm in a mall and there's a Victoria's Secrets girl half dressed on a big placard. It's so prevalent and we just don't need it. In your filmmaking style, the cutting away, I've always credited Steven Spielberg. I said he's one of the best storytellers we've ever had. But part of his genius when he made the film Jaws, because the shark didn't actually work, is he'd cut away, you wouldn't see the shark, whatever. Therefore, it's in your mind, it made things worse. And this film does that time and time and time again. And when she says, and I'm not spoiling anything, folks, let me tell you, she talks about it's been 50 men. In your head, you're replaying the dark scene, and you're like, oh my gosh, I cannot imagine the horror of going through that scene over and over and over and over again. But that is the stark reality of these sex slaves, these poor girls, these women, and these little boys that are trapped somewhere around the world, even right next to you. And that's very important. And let me run down the list of some of the great groups that he has worked with. I know they've been beneficiaries of some of the premieres that happened last year. You know, Justice Speaks, Shared Hope International, the Covenant House in New York, the Safe House of Hope, Out of Darkness, End Slavery, that's in Tennessee, and that's the Ionka Ministries up in Tennessee. And, of course, Salvation Army's Ann House. Traffic 911, which we talked about with Austin Williams, about groups that are trying, and we have to get plugged in. You've got to get connected, find ways to work with people in your community. And Jocko Billings has put together a great film. It's called 8 Days. I can't wait to get DVD copies, and hopefully we can keep supporting the screening that's here in the Tampa Bay area to keep plugging it along for Eden Pictures so they do well, and then they can make another film that tells another tale, and it is very, very powerful. And, you know, Jocko, when you have been, you know, connected to the secular world and stuff, and they seem so desensitized to me about it all. They seem very, you know, it's a problem, but like, you know, I don't know if they feel like they don't know where to begin. I don't know. It's very odd how they're handling that. I wanted you to confirm my perception, but then speak to that a little bit on, you know, maybe why is there that disconnect in the worldly part? I mean, the worldly is worldly, but something like this, we're preached all the time: save the children, help the children, do the but something like this is going on, sort of like, you know, I guess another way to say it was, you know, where's the Gwyneth Paltrows and all of the other feminist people that should be stepping up and trying to take being a face of this or something, and we got nothing, and it's so frustrating.
Yeah, I know it is, and that's why, you know, you're getting me fired up. I cannot, you know, I cannot stand it when someone will stand up when it serves them a purpose personally, you know, in Hollywood, and say, oh, I'm going to fight for women, you know, and then here comes this massive unveiling of human sex trafficking of 12-year-old American girls having sex 24 to 40 times a day. And now where's your voice? You know, now why? It's fear. We are a nation that live in fear, but we're free. It's this massive contradictory, you know, situation. You talk about a Gwyneth and some of these people, any person with a platform, they're afraid. They're afraid of their status being attacked. They're afraid of, if they really take on an issue that's a real targeted issue. Because saying let's fight for women, that's pretty broad. Yeah. You know, let's fight for the rights of women. No, let's fight for women in abusive relationships. Look at what happened with the NFL. I mean, Roger Goodell. I mean, the NFL commissioner had to dance on a hot plate because finally someone pinpointed an issue, right? So we're pinpointing an issue. So I'm asking society to talk specifics, speak detail. Don't talk about family life. Talk about domestic violence. Don't talk about the rights of women. Talk about sexual slavery of American teenagers. You know what I'm saying? I mean, so they don't want to address the targeted issue, because once they do, you're accountable. You're accountable to do something. You're accountable to fix something. People now look at you and say, okay, well, what are you going to do? So they're afraid of their appeal. They're afraid of the issue. And sadly, and this is going to rock some people, sadly, they discover that they've been a part of the problem.
Yeah, absolutely agree. And in Roger Goodell's case in the NFL, you mentioned the Super Bowl means something different to the sex trade industry, and I have a scene in my book that alludes to this. I have, again, been reporting on the Warren Sapp thing, and, you know, if you have an NFL player that's hiring 2 prostitutes in Arizona at 2:30 in the morning, he's part of the problem, putting his money into the system that's fueling this. I'm not trying to say these were underage girls. I'm not even trying to say they were sex slaves. But his cash is perpetuating this problem that we were led to believe all weekend long, right, with all of the helicopters and the hours of security around this place. We're somehow going to try to make an improvement, yet this is the backstory that's happening. And it's on the heels of this great film, folks, 8 Days. You need to check it out. Go online at 8daysfilm.org, find a theater, go check it out for yourself, get plugged in. find out more about some of these organizations. We'll put a whole list of the links on this interview, and they're on our site. If you type in human trafficking on our site, you'll know we periodically are covering some of the major stories all over the globe. And, of course, everyone's talking about Boko Haram finally, and they're kidnapping of little girls. I've been covering that since 2010, so you guys know how passionate I am on this show, on the websites, and in my personal life. And Jaco Brilliant, it has been such a pleasure to talk to you and find out more about the film, and look forward to working with you guys and learning more about your, it's a ministry, brother, whether or not we want to call it that or not. It's what God called you to do, and it's great to use his arms and feet in a way behind a camera.
No, it's a ministry. I will tell you, when Jesus walked into a city, the first thing he did is he looked at where the biggest need was. That's what he did, and he healed somebody. He solved a problem before he said, follow me, and we need to start doing that in society. Organizations like Studio Movie Grill, they're in your area, who's running the film. Brian Schultz, who's the owner of Studio Movie Grill, understands how we can use corporate America to help fight certain issues, and having a radio show like yourself and writing a book and being an author. This is how we do it. We use the gifts God gave us for other people, for the good of other people, not ourselves, and that's ultimately how we're going to make a change. So, Brandon, you're a freedom fighter. I mean, that's it. Your listeners need to know that they're listening to a show that matters. They're listening to an individual who has a show for a purpose. I mean, this is not obviously not about you. It's about them. It's about people, So thank you. I mean, hats off to you. We are excited. We would want to walk a long path with you, man. So God bless you.